Alright, game session is recording, and so we have our continuation of last time's events where you guys had just broken into the um, dwelling of Jackson Elias, and you found him massacred in the middle of his room, and chased down the culprits, killed killed one of them, and incapacitated the other one, managed to revive him so that he wouldn't die, and then the other one just kind of maimed and disabled. And so we're picking up here where we left off, and let me add in a couple little features here that I've been working on. And the whole reason we're doing all this, we have a little bit of police siren action here as the police are arriving on scene. You can hear them responding. What is your reaction going to be? I was talking, yes. You're not in chat channel, Brice. So let's type to him here. Let's see where Brice is at here.
Alright, I got you now.
Alright, Brice. I got you connected as well. Alright, so I'm not sure that everyone heard me, or maybe we were just distracted by Brice trying to connect, but the police are responding. You can hear the sirens coming down the street. You have some individuals that you have taken care of, that you've caught in the act of ransacking Jackson Elias's place, and pretty solid evidence that they were also responsible for murdering him.
So who all's hanging around?
At this point, I believe everyone is hanging around. You do have a couple people who are, or at least they were, on the telephone. Once you're informed that police are on the way, stay where you are. You guys are. You can hang up the phones. You can do whatever you want to at that point. Irene is down on the second floor, and Cecil is on the down by the elevator courtesy phone on the fourth floor. Or Iris was on the second floor.
All
Sorry
right.
if I
Charles
said.
is pinning his badge very prominently on his chest.
Okay. You see some flashing red lights in the alleyway where the fire escape is. Looks like a patrol car has pulled into the alley. You also see some others kind of go by on the main street that the alley connects to. You can assume that they're coming around towards the front of the hotel.
Well, they're probably not gonna take this. Well, this is a mess. Did that one guy get down? We got everyone taken care of, right? The last
Yeah,
guy on the
all,
escape.
all of the perpetrators have been taken care of. So the one guy who had dropped down to the landing below where you guys are at, he was uh, shot and incapacitated. He was bleeding out, but Cecil, upon arriving from making his phone call, went down there and he. Okay, it was Kansas. That's right. Kansas rendered first aid and held pressure to the gut wound and managed to keep the guy from bleeding out and stabilized him.
All right, I'm gonna put my gun up too. I don't want to be waving that around in a scene like this. I'm actually gonna. Is there like a notepad and a pen around I can pick up to look all official?
Uh, it looks like the apartment is pretty ransacked at this point. Things are thrown everywhere. You can't really get a solid perspective at this particular point as you kind of glance around whether or not things are torn up because there was a scuffle here and people were fighting in the room, or if it was because they were actually tossing drawers and everything trying to find some information. Although, as a quick reminder, you guys did find some documents and items that were on each of the individuals, which I did share with you on the website, but we can officially share those now at this particular point. Um, if you want to take the time to kind of glance through them, or you can wait until um, things pass and calm down and you can look at them, in uh, your own privacy.
Irene, do you have that camera handy?
Now, Charles, being an FBI agent, he would be well familiar with crime scene contamination and the need for securing a crime scene and the evidence therein.
Yeah, he's gonna instruct everyone to basically step outside of the room, with the exception of the doc, because he is, I guess, is everyone dead? Didn't we keep one alive?
You have one who is maimed, and
Yep.
you have another one who was gut shot but is stabilized. So
Okay.
there was the one that had his kneecap shot out.
All right.
He
I've got one.
he passed out from the pain. By the
Okay.
way,
I'm gonna cuff him. He shouldn't be too much of a difficulty to cuff, and then the other guy, I'd like to cuff him too. So I'll get Kansas to help me do that if needed.
and then there was the guy who was behind the door who he's dead as can be. You nailed him really good. So he is dead. And yes, 1920s cameras are, some pretty big, bulky kind of things. Or I should say potentially. Um, you do have like your little box cameras and stuff like that, which wouldn't be too bad. We're looking at like maybe like a card file box, like a 3x5 um, box that you keep note cards in. It'd be something kind of like that.
No worries. Everybody, except you, Doc, please step out of the room. Actually, Kansas, if you could stay too, I need you to help me get some cuffs on these.
Yeah, Kansas was trying to get the guy who was down on the lower landing back up the ladder, and so the two of you work together. You get everyone handcuffed. You get everyone back into the room, secured, um, and other than Kansas and Charles, it appears like everyone else has been instructed um, to hang out in the hall. You do kind of notice some people gathering now in the hallway. The neighbors, the other residents who had kind of peeked out at the sound of people yelling for help and call 911 and all that stuff, hearing gunshots and everything else going off. Um, and now that the police are arriving, they can hear the sirens in the street, and you hear the voices in the hallway and everything else. You have some people who are starting to come out of their apartments or slash hotel rooms, and they're kind of gawking around, asking questions. What's going on here? What happened?
Barnabas, if you could keep everyone at bay, we don't want to contaminate the scene any more than it already is. I'm sure the cops are going to be here any second, though. If they say anything, just say you want to speak to Agent Jackson, agent in charge.
All right, and so at this point, you hear some activity out in the alleyway. You hear some shouts. You hear some police radios, and then you hear the elevator operating and some hollering as some people are coming up the stairwell in the interior of the hotel, and some police officers enter into the hallway. Like, move aside, move aside. What's going on here? We got a phone call about a murder. Gunshots fired. there's two police officers who are responding together here, initially coming up the stairs. They kind of have their hands on their holsters on their pistols, but they don't have them drawn. There was word of shots fired, but so they're on alert, on edge a bit, but they're not pointing their guns around or waving and telling people to freeze or anything like that. No, you don't have to make an acting roll. That is fine.
When they come in, Charles tries to act as professional and as possible and not try to act, like all wound up or anything. He wants to try to keep the situation calm.
Okay. So they kind of push their way through the crowd that is congregated in the hall here, and people kind of part ways and let the police officers through, and they get to the doorway that Irene has motioned to. Cecil is also motioning into the room, and the police officers say, "Who called in the report on this?"
I'm actually not sure. Oh, Mr. Barnham.
Yeah, they're still out in the hallway at this point, so Charles and Kansas haven't quite had any interaction with them yet. You can hear them talking out in the hallway and asking questions as they make their way through the people in the hallway. Okay, and with that, after stating that you made the phone call, they say, "Please stay here. We'd like to take your statements after we find out what's going on." More officers will be here soon. And with that, they enter into the room. Upon first entering the room, they see Kansas and Charles standing there in the room. They kind of do a quick survey of the room. They see the gruesome sight on the bed in the middle of the room, and they kind of make a little bit of an expression, where it almost looks like they're about to lose their lunch or something like that. And oh my God, what happened here?
Yeah, you don't see this one every day. Special Agent Jackson. The
I did not
victims.
actually make sanity rolls for them, but by their reaction, you kind of get the idea that they did have to deal with a little bit of sanity issues, or at least kind of freak out a little bit.
I don't have to tell you, officers, please don't contaminate the scene. If you could just keep a little distance there while I do my investigation. But what we know so far is we heard some screams from the room. We came in, and the man's already in this condition here, but the perpetrators were making their escape. Luckily,
Whoa,
myself and
wait a minute. You said FBI. What's FBI doing here?
I actually know the victim. I was here to meet him to take a testimony. He seemed to be fearing of his life. I'm thinking it's something with the book research he's been doing. You see, Mr. Elias Jackson and here know each other from a few years back, and he was going to give me some testimony on some potential cult that he was looking into. But I think they must have got wise to him because, well, look here. You see, there's some kind of crazy symbol carved into his head. These are not your average criminals, as you can tell. Well, we've got 2 alive, so I'm hoping we can get some information out of them if they make it.
And who's this other guy here with you?
Kansas, he's an acquaintance of mine. He's been on a special mission with me before. He's not law enforcement, but he's let's just say he's a private contractor.
And they kind of look around you, and they see you guys didn't do anything or move the guy who was behind the door, did you? He's still there.
I didn't move him.
Okay. Hopefully you didn't, because that would be messing with uh, the integrity of the crime scene a bit there. But so they kind of look down behind the door where they had, their attention had been focused on you for the time being, but now they're kind of glancing around a little bit and just surveying the area and getting expanding their periphery just a little bit. They notice the guy who's kind of tucked in behind the door, slumped down on the ground, with bullet holes in him. And they're
They
like,
seem to have made the mistake to bring knives to a gunfight.
and then they see the other 2 individuals who are kind of leaning up against the wall with the windows that lead out to the fire escape. And they're like, and these guys, these are the ones who did this?
Yeah, they're the ones that did it.
How
Looks like they've got
how
some
did
kind of
you
resemblance.
know? Did you see them in the act? Were you in here when they attacked, or?
I was actually supposed to be meeting Mr. Elias Jackson to take his testimony. We came up at the appointed time, and no one was at the door, so I shook the handle, and I heard, "Someone's coming, let's get out of here." So at that point, Mr. Kansas Peters here broke the door down because we were worried about my friend's well-being, and apparently our hunch was correct. At that point, we engaged 3 suspects that were armed with weapons and very rapidly took them down before they could cause any harm to anyone else or escape. We did
And
intentionally try to keep some alive so we could get some more information to see if there's more, they're working for somebody or whatnot. And full disclosure here, Mr. Jackson was an acquaintance of all the people here. We have some history that we did for him for some book research years ago, but that's not really related to the actual murder.
and where are these weapons that these people were
I'd
supposedly
imagine the knives are around
using?
somewhere. I guess, or would the knives be? I guess they would have dropped them when I blew the guy's hand off.
Yeah, the one of them was, he was holding the hand, and he was right there on the edge of the stairwell, and you shot it, and so he dropped it, and as far as you know, it fell down into the alley. You never
Well,
really saw exactly where it went. The other guy who was on the stairwell, and you shot his knees out. He kind of dropped uh, his knife, um, and it's out there on the fire escape still, unless you picked it up.
no, I don't. I mean, I didn't. If someone else might have, but the suspect behind the door, probably his knife is laying around his feet somewhere. He didn't make it very long. The guy out tried to make an escape on the fire escape, and then Mr. Peters, is it Mr. Peters? Yeah, Kansas went after him, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Kansas went.
Kansas. Mr. Peters went after him. He was about to get stabbed, so I removed the gentleman's hand with my with my 45. So I'd imagine you're gonna find a couple fingers and a knife at the bottom of that alley there.
He gets on his radio, and he says, Unit 527, conduct a search of the alley, please. There may be some evidence down there. Roger that.
Was that a symbol carved on Mr. Elias Jackson's forehead look familiar to you? Have you had any strange reports of any cultist activity?
No. If you were the, you said that we're the one asking the questions. Said, uh, no. Well, we're not at liberty to discuss this case or any implications with it. You'll have to wait until the lieutenant arrives, and he will take over the scene here. Now, I understand that you're with the FBI, but this is New York City, and yeah, until the lieutenant verifies um, your right to investigate this, I'll have to ask that you give your statements and exit the room for now as we try to secure the area and figure out what's going on here.
Yeah, that's fine. We can remove all the civilians, but I'm not going to let you contaminate my scene. If you
Ooh,
wanna
ooh.
lock the door and step out, I'll be glad to join you. But I'm not leaving you in here to blunder all this.
uh, Charles is pulling the big one there.
You really do a persuade or something?
Yeah, give me a persuasion roll or an intimidate, maybe your choice.
It's I'll do
Depends on
persuade.
if you're
It's
trying to
better.
be nice or if you're trying to
Yeah,
be,
I'm gonna
like.
try to intimidate because it's probably more applicable, even though it's a much less score. But we'll see what. Yeah, that didn't work.
Okay. And so you like try to, throw your weight around, your rank, hey, I'm FBI here. I hold jurisdiction, over you and there. Like jurisdiction my ass, Uh, until we find out, whether or not the FBI has an ongoing investigation here. The lieutenant, will secure the crime scene until the evidence squad arrives with the lieutenant, and no one's in or out of this room till then.
All right, seeing how I failed my role, I'm gonna go ahead and agree with you.
That was in character. You said, seeing as how I failed my role.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so yep, my 30 intimidation didn't pull through. So I'm gonna give a shrug to the guys and walk out.
Okay, I
That's
mean
fine. I'll take it up with
they
your
they
lieutenant
are
when he
pretty
gets here.
much abiding by what you had said anyway. I mean, they're just street cops. Their job is to show up, to secure the scene, make sure it doesn't get contaminated before, so that the detectives and the crime scene investigators, when they arrive, they can conduct, the investigation. So the street cops aren't going to go in there and start rummaging through evidence or anything like that. So, all they're doing is just securing the room to make sure that no one comes in and out. And they're going to start taking your statements in the meantime while they wait um, for the crime scene investigators and the lieutenant to arrive. So we can role play through this as much as we want, or we can gloss over it to the desire of you guys. If you're just going to be straight up truthful, tell exactly what happened, from your perspective, then we can just move forward. Hey, I give my statement without any kind of embellishment or anything like that. But if you want to try to um, embellish, hide something, or anything like that, then let me know if there's anything that you guys are going to do like that as well. So some more police officers, which you just kind of figure are again just beat cops. They start to arrive on scene too, and along with the two original ones who showed up, the six who were here, they kind of cull out who was just gawking bystanders and don't really actually know anything that happened other than just hearing some gunshots, versus those of you who were here, actually were involved, saw what was happening, and everything else. And so, just to clarify amongst ourselves with our group, um, at this point, Iris didn't actually see anything. She heard the gunshots. She made the phone call. Cecil, did you actually go into the room, see anything, or did you just hear the yelling as the others entered and started shooting? And then you ran down the hall. I mean, originally. You guys were all out in the hallway, and he kicked in the door. Gunshots were fired, screams, yells, all that stuff. Did you go in and or see anything at that point, or did you just immediately run down the hall to the telephone? Okay, so you'll give the statement, as to what you saw with the two guys out on um, the fire escape, and Kansas and Charles started engaging them with gunfire. They had knives in their hands, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. Charles, we know, of course, what happened with you. Kansas, we know what happened with you as well. Barney, you were running up the staircase, and then uh, what happened? Refresh my memory, and what your statement is going to be as far as what happened after you left the elevator with Iris and ran up the stairs. You ran up the stairs, and then you saw Cecil at the telephone making a phone call to the police. And at that point, you just stayed in the hallway. Okay. And so all you saw was the aftermath, where um, Kansas and Charles were dragging the handcuffed individuals back into the room. And then that's what you'll put in your report, your statement, as far as what had happened. Now, Irene, as far as your statement, you were out in the hall, they kicked in the door, gunshots were fired, and then what did you do from the hallway that you're going to place in your statement? Okay, so you're going to stick with your cover of being a reporter. Okay, so since you're actually still, um, going with your cover and in some ways stretching the truth a little bit here, go ahead and give me a skill roll to see how effective you are with um, your portrayal here. You have a couple different options. You can either roll acting or you can roll persuasion. Okay. Okay. Irene is a little rusty, and she's not really quite uh, putting on a good act. So the police officers, that as you're giving your statement, they're giving you a look, and you've seen this look before. This is a look of, okay, we're not buying this crap. There's something here that's not right. You're just um, not necessarily that you're outright lying about what you're saying, but it's more like the nonverbal communication. You're acting kind of fidgety. Um, you're kind of changing your story a little bit. You stammer over a few words and kind of uh, alter a few small details within your statement that you can tell that they're starting to become suspicious of you. What is going to be um, your response to that? Yes, you can. So you can push the roll, and that will simulate you putting forth a little bit extra effort. You kind of catch on to the cues that they're portraying to you here at this point, and right now you kind of gauge that they're not buying it. It could potentially lead to them hauling you into the station and wanting to interrogate you further because you're lying about, that at least they think that you're lying about something, and so they want to get down to the bottom of it. Or there's not really any evidence to full out arrest you, and you realize that. So as it stands right now, the the drawback to you failing um, is that they're going to look into your story a little bit further by pushing it and giving it that extra effort. Um, a success will mean that you win them over. You kind of uh, correct a few inconsistencies. You turn on the tears. You give them a sob story. You make them feel empathetic towards you, and the tables turn. If you fail this role, however, the result um, will be that they completely disregard anything that you say at this point, and they're going to arrest you and take you down to the station, at least for nothing more than falsifying evidence or falsifying your statement. Well, that's typically the outcome of pushing something, and so it's my job as GM. This is the first time we've kind of come into a big, big um, pushing of the roll scenario here, and so I'm letting you know what the risks are before you make the roll. And that is my responsibility as GM, and so it's your choice to decide. Okay, do we take a chance on? Okay. So you can tell as they're taking down their statements, they're giving you the odd eye, and like, thank you for your statement, Miss Ward. Be sure that you stay here. Officer Jackson here um, will stay with you until the lieutenant arrives. He may have some further questions for you.
Well, we're
Johnson.
one down.
How about we do Johnson? Officer Johnson here.
We're one less Jackson, though.
True. And his first name was Jackson, so, but we'll say Johnson. Officer Johnson will stay here with you until the lieutenant arrives. And Irene gets the feeling that this is unusual. They've not done this with anyone else. It seems like they've taken their statements and they've moved on, and they're asking, other people questions and everything. But this particular police officer, he's hanging out here with you for a little bit to make sure that you don't do anything or go anyplace. Most likely, Irene um, would get the feeling based on his response. Okay, so moving on. By the time they're done taking statements, this takes several minutes, to conduct. We're talking about a good 15-30 minutes. During that time, while they're taking statements, some medical personnel arrive, and they go to tend to the wounded individuals who are handcuffed, and the police officers um, allow the medical personnel into the room, making sure that they don't traps through the uh, blood and the main evidence of the scene or anything, but they do need to get in there to tend to the suspects and render aid. And so they gather up the two living individuals, put them onto stretchers, and they carry them out of the room. There's two police officers with each suspect who follows along with the medical personnel. Are you guys going to just let things be, let them take the suspects to the hospital and under police guard, or are you going to interfere, do anything about it?
I start heading out. I'm gonna say, officers, you have the scene taken care of. I'm going with these witnesses.
Okay,
Or these
so
suspects.
okay, the suspects. So Charles is going to go down with the two suspects, the medical personnel, and the police officers. Everyone else is all going to just hang tight where they are. Okay. So whenever you get down to the street level, Charles, you see that they're loading the suspects up into ambulances, and um, the two police officers hop into the ambulances with the suspects.
I happen to just like it's nothing.
Okay. So you're just going to jump in as well. You got your badge pinned
Yeah.
to your shirt, right?
Yep.
Okay. So they kind of look at you a little bit strange, then they see your badge, and then they just kind of, you can see them kind of glance at each other and kind of make a eye rolly kind of a gesture, and they don't really say anything
Is
though.
it
They're
the
not
cops
very.
or the EMTs?
No, these are the cops. You know,
I tell
they.
the EMTs, I say, careful, these two are murder suspects. They're not in good condition, but they might be a little unstable in the head.
All right. And so they load them up, close the doors, and the ambulances take off, which you assume is to the hospital. Okay, we're going to pull back from that scene there, and we're going to come back up to the individuals in the hallway. A few minutes later, after the uh, the suspects are carried out of the room, you see an individual coming towards you, and I'm going to share his likeness here with you. All right, we have an individual who comes up, and he's flashing a badge, as he comes up. He's like, "Hello." The other police officers, the beat cops, who are out in the hall, kind of making sure that all of you guys taking your statements and making sure that the witnesses are culled out from the gawkers and bystanders. The bystanders are told to head back to their rooms because pretty much all they have to report is just, hey, I heard gunshots at so and so time, and some yells out in the hallway, and that's about all they have to say. Um, this other individual, he comes up and he introduces himself as Lieutenant Poole, Lieutenant Martin Poole. Says, "Thank you, officers. I'll take this investigation from here." A few of the officers depart, and you figure they kind of go back to their patrols, or they're going to start filling out their reports or whatever. There are a few that still hang out to assist Lieutenant Poole. He's not just left here by himself. And so Lieutenant Poole looks around to the group of witnesses, and he says, "So I understand that you guys arrived here to meet with the victim, and you you entered the residence upon hearing that there's suspicion of foul play inside. Is that correct? And upon entering the room, you saw how many suspects? And according to the statements that I've been given, one of those did not survive, but the other two have been taken into custody and are now on their way to General Hospital. A symbol in his forehead, you said? He's not gone into the room and investigated the room yet. He just stopped for a moment. You saw him kind of talking to the officers in kind of hushed voices and everything, but he's not been into the room. He stopped and he's talking to you guys here initially. Have you ever come across anything like this before? And you said that your friend was conducting some investigations, and he had stated uh, he had stated to you that he was in fear of his life. And yes, I was told that an FBI agent was here. Where is this Agent Jackson now? He kind of holds up his hand for just a moment, and he turns his head and he whispers something to uh, one of the patrol cops who's in the hallway there with him. And the patrol cop kind of walks off and down the hall a little bit, and he comes across the radio, and he's saying something on the radio, but you can't really quite quite hear what it is that he's saying. Then Lieutenant Poole turns back to you and addresses you, and uh, says, "Now, if you will, please stay here for a moment while I uh, check out the crime scene. I want to see what it is exactly that we're dealing with here." A couple of the other cops that are in the hallway, they kind of still stand there, just maintaining order and discipline in the hallway. And Lieutenant Poole, he steps into the room. You guys are kind of back away from the doorway, so you can't see him as he goes in. Are you going to shift, move? Are you going to walk over to the doorway to see, to try to watch him, or are you just going to let him do his thing and wait for him to come back out to you? Okay, he comes back out into the hallway, and he kind of pulls a kerchief out of his pocket, and he kind of wipes his forehead a little bit, and he's like, you can see the expression on his face. It's kind of like it's kind of a mixed expression. It's one of almost kind of disgust, like a sickening kind of expression. But then there's something kind of about the expression as well that is almost like a recognition kind of reaction as well. There's just this tiniest little hint that you get, where you get the feeling that even though this is like disgusting and that it kind of freaks him out a little bit, that there's something that it doesn't seem like it's completely unexpected or unfamiliar to him. As he comes back out to the hallway, he's kind of wiping his head for a moment, and he says, "Thank you all for giving your statements. We have we'll gather your statements together, go through the evidence, the crime scene team is on their way here. We will conduct an investigation to everything that has taken place. Your stories seem to check out for the most part." And whenever he says the "for the most part," he kind of does a quick little glance over to Irene. He says, "I'd like for all of you to remain available over the next few days, so that we can contact you if there's any additional testimonies or information that we need from you. Please, if each of you would give your lodging and contact information to each of the officers. We'll put those with your statements so that you may be contacted later on. I'm sure that you'll be anxious to hear about the disposition of or the progress on the case regarding your friend anyway." We shouldn't discuss anything like that at this particular point. I need to gather what evidence I can here at the scene, confer with my superiors, and we'll get in touch with you to let you know if there's any additional information. Any publicly released information will be available to you then that is not sensitive to the case. And he says, now, uh, he looks to the officers and looks to you and says, now, if you will give these officers your information, except for you, Miss Ward. Miss Ward, if you'll step down the hall here with me, please. He moves you away some distance away from the others, and he gives you the stern cop look. And he says, Miss Ward, I'm not sure what exactly is going on here, but my officers who took your statement relayed to me that there were some inconsistencies in your story. They said that you claimed to be a reporter. What is it exactly that the Manchester Gazette has an interest here in New York City? Yes, go on. And exactly what did this telegram say? You can look it up in um, your handouts if you want to refer to it real quick. You might actually have it on your person. The Carlisle expedition. What's this have to do with the Carlisle expedition? That was years ago. Did Mr. Elias say anything more to you? Was there any information? Did he have any other telegrams, notes, anything that would be uh, evidence for a motive as to why this would be done to him? You and all these other individuals as well? And how well do all the rest of you know each other? And the FBI agent who was here, I was told it was Agent Jackson, I believe. Uh, I'll need to hunt him down to talk to him as well, but was he also with you in Peru along with the others? I see. And so from what you've told me, or other than what you've told me here, there's nothing more that you know that you can tell me about. No further evidence that Mr. Elias may have had. And while you were here, before the police arrived, was there anything that the suspects told you or did that would indicate any type of motive? He gets a bit of an expression on his face, almost one of um, like um, a regretful recollection. You know, that he recalls something that he doesn't, and it isn't pleasant for him to recall. And he kind of shakes his head a little bit. He says, "No, it certainly was not an ordinary killing." Give me a persuasion roll. Sure, you can use charm. Okay, tied in with that, I also want you to give me an acting roll with a bonus die. And these are going to be for two different things. Okay. He looks at you quizzically for a second, and he says, "You want Miss Ward? I think you may be all right. I understand this whole thing is enough to shake a sensitive woman such as yourself." However, if we're going to talk about any kind of particulars about what's going on here, it's going to have to be completely off the record. There have been some other killings here in New York. Most of them around Harlem, though. It's unusual to see one over in this area. I just know that the same symbol has appeared on those bodies. You know, all that I know is that there's talk of some sort of a serial killer um, or gang. Um, there was someone that we thought was guilty of this, but he was arrested and he's on death row now. So I don't know if this is an accomplice of his or if it's a copycat or what exactly is going on. However, I'm not in charge of the case though, so I'm not at liberty to discuss much more than this. Honestly, I don't really know much more myself other than just the rumors and uh, what's common knowledge from the media. The one who's heading up this the investigation into this strange string of killings that we had previously is Captain Walter Robson. Give me another charm roll. Actually, what was your previous charm roll? It was a hard success, right? Okay. With a hard success, he's going to be a little more approachable here. Says just a little friendly tip, though, from me to you. Use a little bit of care and caution if you're going to uh, go if you're going to approach Captain Robson. You see him kind of glance over your shoulder a little bit, kind of look around just to make sure that no one is too close within earshot. You kind of get the feeling that he doesn't want what he's going to say to be overheard. He says, "I just have this feeling, call it investigative intuition, a bit of a hunch, if you would say, that there's something strange going on with the captain. There's some rumors that he might be on the take." I don't know. What can I say? The evidence was there, and he was convicted. There's only so much that I can do. But, I don't know. An investigator such as yourself, maybe you could look into it a little bit further. You might be able to dig something up. Just remember, none of this came from me. Now, if you would be so kind, Miss Ward, to let me know where you're staying while you're here in town. Thank you. And I notice your accent is fairly recognizable. If you do go digging around in New York, especially Harlem, be careful. I'd hate to see a pretty little blonde thing such as yourself wind up in trouble over in Harlem. Now, if you will, I have an investigation to conduct. I see that the crime scene, the homicide detectives are coming down the hallway. With that, you turn around and you see a group of about 3 individuals, and they're carrying some suitcases with them as they come down the hallway, and they work their way past the patrol cops and past your other companions, and they go into the room. Lieutenant Poole, he dismisses himself, and he walks off and walks into the room to join the detectives. Okay, are you going to do anything else as you walk down the hall and walk past the doorway? Okay, give me a listen check. Listen. Okay, you walk by, and the investigators, they're talking to each other, but it's kind of a little bit garbled. You can't uh, quite ascertain exactly what it is that you're saying. You kind of get a feeling that what they're discussing with each other could potentially be something important. They seem to be discussing something about the case. But like I said, it's garbled. Uh, you can't make out the details in your as you pass by the doorway. You can push the roll, and so you can pause for a moment as you pass by the doorway. You can kind of stop. You can kind of lean back a little bit and kind of get closer to the opening of the doorway. Kind of hang out there for a moment and listen a little bit harder. See if you can tell exactly what it is that you're saying. However, if you fail this roll, then it means that you are busted. You are caught eavesdropping, and whatever type of repercussions may come from that. Can't spend luck whenever you push something. So you're stuck with the outcome whenever you push. you kind of pause for a moment, and you kind of lean back, and you're like, peeking into the room and turning your head so that you can hear what they're saying. And then you notice that one of the detectives, he's in the middle of saying something, and he stops as soon as he notices you there, and says, "Excuse me, gentlemen, it seems that we have an eavesdropper. This is not Lieutenant Poole. This is one of the detectives." And he walks over to the doorway. He says, "You find something interesting, ma'am? What can we do for you?" Lieutenant Poole kind of looks over in that direction, and he says, "Oh, Joe, that's Miss Ward. She's one of the deceased friends." "Yeah, well, you know what they say. Curiosity killed the cat. So, best just move along, dame." All right. All right, go ahead and act it out. He gives you a look. It's like, go back to acting school, broad. No one believes that crap. Then he takes the door and he slams it shut in your face, pretty much. And as the door is closing, right as it slams, you can hear him say, "Okay, now, gentlemen, let's get back to business." All right, and with that, we're going to kind of wrap up the scene here. The street cops are done getting their statements. They've got the contact information for everyone, and they've turned in their statements and reports and everything to the lieutenant, and they go back to business. You guys all congregate together, go down into the lobby, and oh yeah, you'd be able to stay at a nice hotel with your credit rating, Iris. Okay, so you guys all gather together down in the lobby, and you start to share information or start to discuss about what has just transpired here. Now, do keep in mind that it is fairly late at night. You guys were meeting with Jackson Elias at 8 o'clock. Uh, Pretty much 8 o'clock on the dot was when the shit hit the fan, and by the time all of this is done, you guys are done giving statements and everything else. It's getting close on to about 9. Um, and we're going to kind of cut scene there for a moment and put you guys on hold, and we're going to flash on over to Charles. Are you here with us, Charles?
Hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, cool.
Just barely. It's kind of a little bit subdued, but
I'll turn
I
it
can.
up.
There we go. That's better. All right. So Charles, you are pulling up at the hospital. They bring the suspects along with the cops who are escorting you into the hospital. The emergency room team is tending to them, and they treat their wounds and they get them stabilized and everything else. Um, then the two individuals are put into a room. The street cops are still staying there and kind of overseeing the whole process. Uh, you are given your handcuffs back, and assuming that you claim them,
Yeah, I definitely would.
and, you can say, hey, whenever they take them off, to treat the individuals, you can say, hey, can I have my cuffs back? And the individuals, they put them into a room for care and treatment and observation, but their hands and their feet are bound to the bed with some leather straps. Kind of those uh, straps with the buckles on them, that you see in movies, for the 20s and stuff like that, like in an insane asylum kind of a thing. But they have theirs because they're suspects. But just instead of handcuffs, they're using the leather straps.
I'm sure the guy that's been capped in the knees probably isn't doing too much resistance.
No, neither one of them are. I mean, the other one got gut shot. I mean, he was pretty much dying. If it wasn't for Kansas kind of stabilizing him temporarily, he had to undergo some pretty major surgery to get the bullet out of his gut and cinch the internal bleeding and repair the damage and everything else. But they report that it seems like he's going to pull through, but he's still unconscious from the anesthetic and everything else. However, the guy who has had his kneecap shot, he also, I mean, he's probably not going to be walking anytime soon, if ever, and at least not without some major therapy. Probably, going to be using a wheelchair or a walker, cane, kind of a thing for the rest of his life. But he at least has kind of started to rouse a little bit, kind of in a semi-lucid kind of a state. The anesthetic from his surgery is starting to kind of wear off a little bit. And
Are they letting me near? near him, or no? Are they trying to keep me away or anything?
You're not being restricted access or anything at this particular point. The street cops are just kind of standing guard at the doorway, and they're just keeping an eye on the suspects, making sure that people who are coming in and out of the room are um, authorized personnel, hospital personnel, or law enforcement personnel.
All right. On the way over, I want to try to strike up a conversation with the beat cops and see if they've had any kind of like reports of anything like this. But I'll try to do it like nonchalant, like you guys ever see anything this crazy out here? This is nuts.
Okay, so we're gonna retcon back just a little bit. Do a retro scene here, back to whenever flashback from when you guys were in the ambulances on your way to the hospital. Sirens kind of blaring, in the background a bit, and and they kind of look at you a bit, and they kind of chuckle. Give me a persuasion
Yeah, I'll
roll.
try the nice guy routine since my weak frame is non-intimidating. Yes, that's so bad.
You guys are sucking tonight.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so they chuckle a little bit, and they're like, "Bub, you're not from around here, are you?"
Is it that obvious?
Well, just go read some newspapers, if you want to find out any more information.
You got one handy? Now let's
We
start
don't
looking.
want to we don't want to jeopardize our badges, by sharing any information that's not supposed to be shared.
Hey, I can respect that. Um, I'm actually surprised how many people just spill the beans when you ask. I'm glad to see you guys are good cops.
I'm glad you can recognize that. So, what's G-Man doing here?
I actually knew the victim. I talked to him a couple times a year. He's a author. He sold a lot of books. But I met him in Peru. He was studying some kind of crazy cult, and it looks like it finally caught up with. But you didn't hear that from me.
You see, kind of give me a spot hidden roll, since you're sucking at everything else here.
Yeah, I got one. Tick mark? Do I get a tick mark?
Sure, you can have a tick mark.
Sweet.
All right, you notice an expression whenever you say cults, kind of a thing, like investigating cults, and it caught up with him, and and one of the guys says to the other one, he's like, "Hey Bob, I thought they caught that cult murdering guy." He looks over at his at the other guy, and he says, "I don't know, Joe. I mean, he's on death row, but you never know. Maybe he had some accomplices that were working with him."
I know the last cult we cracked into, it had a bunch of people. I'm sure that it's no fun being a cultist by yourself.
I don't know if you're gonna want any more information about that. You're going to have to talk to the captain.
All right, I can respect that. How what's good to do in town? I haven't been to New York since I was a kid, and I wasn't old enough to drink back then.
You may as well forget about the drinking now, with prohibition and everything.
Hey, just testing you boys again. Actually, I never did drink. Never my.
Give me a fast talk roll.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and fail this one too. So I have a 7 vest. Oh, so close.
I assume you're just gonna let that one fail.
Yeah. He really doesn't drink a lot, but he might have one every now and
They kind of chuckle a little bit and they go, "Yeah, sure. Yeah, say whatever you want. We know how it is."
then. Yeah, I just kind of smile.
All right. And so
These cultists are African. Well, I wouldn't say African American, but they're African
they are
or
African,
African American,
yes.
I guess. Were they
They're
they were
they're
speaking a
they're
different
black.
language,
Yeah.
like dark black?
Dark black. Yep.
Okay, and there's probably not a ton of black people around anyway.
Oh, there's a lot of black people in New York.
Okay,
Yeah, I
right.
mean it's not like
Mostly in Harlem.
Harlem does have the vast majority, but and that is definitely a hopping place in the 20s. Harlem is kind of known as um, the swing club, speakeasy kind of headquarters. All of the happening things, all of the new clubs and everything, all popping up, jazz and all of that is really big in Harlem around this time period.
Did they let African Americans be police officers back then, or was that a more recent thing?
They actually did, yes. And there were some police officers. There were even some female police officers, although fairly rare. But of course, the vast majority are going to be white. But there were actually some. Surprisingly enough, this just a little side note here. I'm going to digress just a little bit. But this adventure is actually very interesting from a historical perspective because the text of the adventure, they kind of go into some side notes about the era and everything else, and actually gives some historical references as far as who was the first black cop in New York City, and who was the first female cop in New York City, and I think there was, if I remember correctly, there was even a black female um, that it had mentioned here, but I can't remember immediately offhand. Um,
Pretty cool.
yeah, here we go. In terms of historic landmarks, the new NYPD hired its first. So just um, to back up just a little bit here, um, although preceded by a variety of law enforcement agencies, the New York City Police Department didn't technically come into existence until the amalgamation of the 5 boroughs in 1898. Based around the same model as London's Metropolitan Police Force, the NYPD inherited the brutality, corruption, and political infighting of its predominantly Irish American predecessors. Although Theodore Roosevelt instituted a series of reforms in the late 19th century in his role as president of the Police Commission, these were followed by more restructuring and modernization during the early decades of the 20th century. In terms of historic landmarks, the new NYPD hired its first African American police officer in 1911, Samuel J. Battle. Based in Harlem during the 1920s, he also became the NYPD's first African American sergeant in 1926.
Yeah, that's a lot earlier than I was expecting.
The first female detective was in place by 1912, Isabella Goodwin, and its first African American policewoman, Lawson R. Bruce, Lawan R. Bruce, was patrolling the streets by 1920. By the end of the 1920s, the force also had its own motorcycle squad, automobile squad, and aviation unit. So I found it kind of interesting as I was reading this. I was actually getting a little bit of a history lesson at the same time. That was kind of my original assumption too. that up until like the 1940s, 1950s, with the civil rights movements, that blacks were pretty much, and even women too. I mean, for the most part, were just shunned from all those kinds of occupations. But apparently, within limited degrees, that there were a few instances of them being integrated into the different social and political structures. But you notice that that was in Harlem too. He was the African American police officers were police officers in Harlem, which is predominantly almost fully black community. So it would be more fitting to think, yes, you're going to pull police officers from their own neighborhoods.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, for the most part, women, were always kind of like background roles, like secretaries and transcriptionists and clerical, types of things. But being an authority figure like a cop, would be a little bit unexpected for that time era. Okay, now history lesson aside, let's jump back into the events that are taking place here.
Alright, so I was hoping I could get some info out of them, but I didn't roll well, so my next task would try to get some information out of one of the murder.
Okay, so now we're going after we did our flashback scene of you kind of trying to chum it up with the beat cops and kind of being personal with them a little bit, but not really gaining very much useful information. They're standing guard at the outside the hospital rooms, and you kind of stroll on into the room and up to the bed of one of the individuals. He's laying in the bed, and he's got his legs all in traction and everything else, where they're trying to fix his broken bones and everything from where the bullets have shattered them, and they have his legs casted and set and everything else, and then his hands are in leather cuffs strapped to the sides of the bed.
He's awake.
Kind of semi-awake. His eyes are kind of opening a little bit. It looks, but he's got an IV drip, and you're not a medical person. You don't have any idea what it is that they're giving him. He's got an IV, and a drip is going into a line into him, and his eyes are just kind of fluttering a little bit and just barely opening somewhat as you walk up to him.
Alright, is there anyone else in the room?
Just the police officers that are stationed outside the door.
Okay. I just tap him on the forehead.
Okay. McFly! Wake up, McFly!
Good morning, sunshine. Comprende the English?
Comprende the English. His eyes kind of stretch open a little bit more, and he kind of recoils back away from you a little bit, and he talks in a very thick kind of an African accent, and you're not understanding anything that he's talking about. You don't know if it's the drugs, if he's slurring his speech, or if he's talking in another language.
I go over to his bandages on his knees, and I start like pointing my finger to it, getting really close and seeing how responsive he is. If he's like sweating it, I'm not gonna like jam my finger in it or anything, but I'm kind of just like I'm going.
They're casted. I mean, he's got, big, plaster cast, around his legs. You know how you see in the movies, where the guy is plaster casted and like almost like a body cast, and they got their legs are in traction, they're supported up by the straps and all that stuff. That's kind of how
Yeah.
this guy is. Only if it's not his body, it's just his legs.
All right, I'm gonna make eye contact with him. I'm gonna pull my gun out and I'm gonna just put it right in his crotch.
Okay, are you
He
making
already
any
knows I've
attempt?
shot him several times.
Are you making any attempt at being subtle about this?
No,
So
the
that
other people are outside, so I'll just put my back toward the door in case there's a window, and then
okay,
the gun I'll just point right at his nuts.
then give me a stealth.
Oh yeah.
Alright. So you position yourself, where you're obscured, knowing if the cops were to turn around and look into the room, they wouldn't see jack squat. And you're putting your gun right up to his nards.
I have this translator here. If you want to start talking, does he seem like he's responding?
Is he seems like he's still kind of drugged a little bit, but his eyes, I mean, kind of widen a little bit. He kind of starts to squirm a little bit, and he starts to mutter, okay, okay, okay.
Why'd you kill my friend?
He he asking too many questions.
Well, I got some questions. What questions was he asking?
His his
Yeah, I gotta give my daughter some medicine, so you might want to cut to somebody else.
Okay, yeah, we'll give you a break here for just a second while I think about what his response is going to be, and then we'll jump back to the others. All right, so we're going to jump back to so we cut scene at a very intense critical moment there as Charles has his gun shoved into the victim, and he's contemplating on whether or not he's going to give any kind of information. We leave it there with a little bit of a cliffhanger, and we fade back over to the group of individuals in the lobby of the hotel. Okay, so you guys are going to hail some taxis, head back to someone's room. Iris, where are your bodyguards at? And what were they doing while the police were around questioning you and everything else? Or your one bodyguard, I should say. Yeah, plus Iris probably has the nicest room out of all of you guys, the biggest and most posh, with more room for everyone to gather at. And did you have one or two bodyguards? I can't remember. I don't know if she quite has half of a floor, but she definitely has a suite at the Waldorf Astoria. In fact, while we're talking about the Waldorf Astoria, there's the Waldorf Astoria for you. Give me a credit rating roll, Iris. Okay. Mommy and Daddy definitely think that you were worth hiring 2 bodyguards for. Yes, you guys are meeting in the hotel. It scared your cat. It's funny. That is the sounds of an elegant dinner party. So you guys are all sitting around and you're having a bite to eat from room service, and your plates are clanking and silverware is being used, and all that kind of stuff. I was trying to play these sounds earlier whenever we were in the murder scene, and I was playing them on my end, but they weren't transmitting across Discord because I accidentally had selected one of the wrong outputs, and so we were supposed to get some sound effects during the crime scene investigation there, but I couldn't. I had some technical difficulties that I just realized where I had made a mistake. Now, did Charles Jackson grab up some of that stuff? Because I think he grabbed his own group of papers. So all that you guys have is what, if I remember correctly, I think that Kansas grabbed papers off of one of the guys who was out on the fire escape, and then who grabbed the papers from the guy who was dead behind the door? I was thinking that it was Irene, but I wasn't sure. Which secretly, that's why I had you make one of those rolls, Irene, whenever you were interacting with Lieutenant Poole, because I wanted to see whether or not you accidentally revealed to him that you had some evidence, because I thought that you had grabbed some of the papers. Okay, so for criminal number, or suspect number 3, he had the papers that Irene grabbed from the man behind the door. He only had one item, and the one that he had was this one. And so Irene is holding on to this this piece of paper. It almost looks like an advertisement, like a street flyer kind of a thing. It's a small sheet of paper, It looks like an ordinary handbill that would be posted publicly or passed out on the street. It seems to be advertising someone by the name of Professor Cowell's guest lecture at New York University. Iris definitely recognizes the name. Iris knows that Professor Cowles is definitely on staff at Miskatonic. She doesn't really personally know him all that well. She's had a few interactions with him. She may have had some brief discussions with him from time to time concerning various different occult subjects. She has personally not listened to this lecture that is advertised in this flyer. But she is familiar with the professor. She does know that he had a strange accent. Iris, give me an intelligence check. Okay, Iris is pretty sure, even though they kind of somewhat sound a little bit similar to the untrained ear or the inexperienced, she noticed some distinct differences between Professor Cowell's accent in regard to what she knows of Irene and Barney's accent. Kind of similar, but there are some distinct differences in the accent, and she is pretty sure that it's an Australian accent. With some of the things that he says, like, "G'day, mate." Oh, does it actually say that in the flyer? Oh, of the University of Sydney, Australia. Okay. He does currently work as a professor of anthropology at Miskatonic University. Because of the attention garnered, never mind, disregard that. Iris would know that the professor was generally fairly friendly and open whenever she would talk to him. He seemed rather an approachable kind of a guy. You guys didn't really have a whole lot of time, or at least you didn't state that you were hanging out and you were going to scrounge through the apartment. So, pretty much what you guys did was you kind of gathered up the papers that were on these individuals. You stabilized their wounds and everything. You heard sirens coming, and you were like, crap, we better get out of here and not mess with anything. So you guys didn't really search through his apartment any. Okay, for Kansas, let's see. The guy that you killed was the guy who fell off, or didn't kill, but the guy that you went after, who fell off of the landing, and then you had to stabilize him, was suspect number 2. And so the information that you got from him was let's see, you got papers. Four, 5, and 6. So you got this one. You got this one. And you got this one. So, one of the papers that you have appears to be a typewritten letter without any kind of an envelope, and it appears like it's from an individual named Miriam Atwright from Harvard University, and she appears like maybe she's a librarian. It is addressed to Elias in the care of his publishers. It looks like maybe he was inquiring about some type of book. Okay, one of the other objects that you acquired looks like it's some sort of business card. It's for a place called Emerson Imports. It is addressed to, or the address to Emerson Imports is actually here in New York City. On the back of the card, whenever you flip it over, you notice that handwritten on the back of it, it says Silas in Quane, Quane, I think that's probably how you, Nikwane, Silas Nikwane. And then the third and most obscure of all the items that Kansas managed to acquire is a photograph. And you don't really know what the importance of this photograph is. It's kind of blurry and grainy. It shows a steam or possibly maybe a diesel-powered ship, like a yacht of some sort, beyond some oriental-looking kind of boats. You would recognize with your anthropology and archaeology and all that stuff that these are, an oriental Chinese junk, kind of a ship. Yeah, don't bother rolling it. You know it. Yeah, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to recognize the type of ships that these are. Now, more importantly, though, would be whether or not you could identify where the photograph is taken. And so I will let all of you make a hard intelligence check. Yes, Kansas's photographic memory could help him here. If you have photographic memory, now this is going to be more of a personal experience more than a education related kind of a thing. Okay, so all of you kind of ponder, you look at this photograph and you're like, okay, somewhere in the Orient, because look at those Chinese junks, but none of the buildings in the background don't look Chinese or anything else. Well, I wonder what the significance of this is and where it could be at. And Kansas takes a look at it for a moment, and then he recognizes it because he has been to China at sometime in the past, in his travels and everything else. He recognizes that the buildings in the background are they were probably taken on the Huangpu River in Shanghai. You cannot spend luck on sanity rolls. Just so you know, Iris. For sanity loss. Oh, okay, you have resilient. Well then, I guess that changes things. And I should restate, by default, you can't spend luck on sanity rolls. Okay, and so those are the 4 documents that you guys have in your possession at this time. Now, Kansas would have known that Charles also picked up some documents off of one of the other individuals, but you guys have not had an opportunity yet to share any information with Charles. Okay. While you guys are pondering the importance and the implications of the items that you have absconded, we're going to jump back to the hotel room. I mean, not the hotel room, the hospital room. And let me shut off the diner here.
Sound effects are nice. I'm hearing a echo.
Oh, you are getting a little bit of an echo?
I hear myself.
Oh, you're hearing yourself talk?
Anyone else hear that?
My mic shouldn't be picking him up because I have headphones on, but it could be the program that is doing that. So I'll just shut it off here and stop that input. All right. Are you still getting an echo whenever you talk?
Test. Yep.
Okay. How about now?
Test. That. Oh. No, still echo.
Still echoing?
Yeah, I didn't earlier.
Okay.
It's a
How about
delay
now?
and then an echo.
Anything there?
Test. Test. Yep.
There?
Test. Test. Test.
That was pretty bad. All right.
Oh, I said test 3 times.
Oh, you did say test 3
It's still
times.
echo
Okay.
though.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just disable. I'll silence this for right now. We won't mess with the sound effects for you with the hotel room. Let me silence that.
I didn't get the echo earlier.
Here, I wanna mute the sounds channel for right now. All right. So you're in the hotel room.
The hospital room.
Yeah, the hospital room. So, resuming back where we left off, you have your gun pointed at the suspect's nards, and you're asking him, you know, refresh, do a little playback on that. You know exactly what it was that you were asking him.
So basically I was saying, what kind of questions was Elias asking to get him killed?
I will not say anything, for the Dark Lord will consume me.
I give him a little little, like, push in a little bit with my gun. Well, I don't know if you're calling my gun the Dark Lord, but it'll consume your nuts.
Give me a listen check. You hear some voices out in the hall as you're doing this, as you're, kind of threatening the suspect and holding your guns, up to his nuts there, and you hear something going on out in the hallway that kind of draws your attention for just a second as your ears kind of pick up on it, and it sounds like the two beat cops out there talking. You hear a third voice as well, a different voice than what you had heard before.
I'll pull the gun back and I'll say, "Don't worry, buddy. This conversation ain't over. Pretty soon you're gonna think the Dark Lord is a tooth fairy after you're done with me."
Yes, Captain Robson. The suspects are in this room there. There's an FBI agent in there with them while we wait for them to wake up.
All right, put my gun up and I'll take a couple steps off.
Okay, very quickly you holster your gun. You got a shoulder holster, right?
Yeah, it'd probably be like a not a hip, but like under the arm.
Right.
I guess
Yeah,
a
shoulder holster, a harness, rig. And so you slip it, back into the holster, up underneath your armpit.
I'm
inside
dual carrying now too.
Oh, you are dual carrying?
Yeah, I picked up a 45 after the last.
Okay, so you got a double rig, one on each side, and so you slip it, up into your shoulder holster, up underneath your sport coat, and you hear the footsteps, and there's a voice that you've not heard yet that let me refresh my memory on this guy's persona here. And I'm going to throw up a portrait for him as well. All right, there's an individual who walks in. You turn around, and as you stand up, just after you get done shouldering or holstering your sidearm, and he's a tall, solidly built white man with gray hair, heavy jowls, and a nose that appears to have been broken more than once. He wears expensive tailored suits, and usually you spot kind of a diamond tie pin. One of his, he kind of, as he talks to you, or he kind of smiles a bit as he walks into the room, you can notice that one of his incisors is missing, as he flashes kind of a toothy grin towards you. And he says, "Ah, my, so as if it isn't the G-Man. Well, what is our blessing to have you assisting us on this case?"
I was actually in town to meet the victim. He had some information he was going to share with me, but it looks like he's going to be keeping that to himself.
Ah, really? Well, what kind of information is that? Perhaps it could be useful for our case.
Well, I'm assuming that he had something to do with knowing what was going to happen to him, but apparently didn't get it to me quick enough. That's all right, though. We kept this one alive here, and the other one, we shot him in the knees, so he wouldn't run.
Well, that was some good thinking. I wouldn't have expected such a thing from a G-man.
Good thinking.
I thought you guys
him a look.
I thought you guys were usually, shoot to kill, ask questions later.
No.
No. So he says, so this Jackson Elias, you said that you were friends with him?
I wouldn't say friends. I would say acquaintances. We actually met him in Peru many years ago. I was on a special assignment and he just happened to be there. But we've kept in touch over the years a couple times. He's reached out
We
to me for some book research and just exchange some information now and then, but nothing too serious until recently.
we met him. Who else are you talking about?
There's some other people in town. I believe they've probably given their statements by now. But he, he's an author. I don't know if you've already looked him up or not. But he, I really don't know all the details. He was supposed to share them with us here, so I'm guessing he feared for his life and wanted as many people around him as he could.
He appears to ponder for a moment as he kind of thinks, and he's like, well, New York has many authors, one here, one there. This Jackson Elias fellow. I'm sure I'll get a detailed report uh, from the individuals involved. Who did you say was leading this case?
Who was meeting in this case? Is that what you said?
Leading the case.
No, it really wasn't a case yet. We were getting more information to see if there was a case there. He's the one doing all the research and digging into all these cults. I mean, I'm surprised he hasn't got himself into trouble before now. He's written like 6 or 7 books on crazy cults.
Yes, well, I'll have to look a little bit deeper into these reports and testimonies that have been given to see what kind of information can be found about what your friend was looking into.
I have to be clear. We gotta quit using the friend thing. That makes me look kind of suspect, if you know what I mean. He was an acquaintance.
Yes, acquaintance, friend. I mean, you know, I'd like it if you call me your friends. I'll help you out. You help me out.
Well, we can work up to that.
So, is there any kind of useful information that you think could help us with this case?
Yeah, he already admitted that he killed him because he was asking too many questions. So we've already got a confession. Now we
Oh,
just got to get some more information. I don't think this. Maybe we should step out of the room. Not talk
so
in
so
front of.
so you just now got a confession from him?
Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully you read him his rights, right?
Of course. Let's step out of the room. Perhaps we shouldn't. We shouldn't talk in front of the confessed murderer.
I don't know if Miranda was a thing back then or not. I just thought it was funny to throw it in. Sure. We'll step out and share a few notes.
Sounds great. All right, cool. So I'm gonna basically step him out somewhere. Hopefully, we can get a little bit of privacy and you give him the overview of the whole scene in the first place. Weird symbols, and it does definitely look like some kind of cult activity. Okay, cool. So you don't even have to read people the rights now, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's like you beat the confessions out of people,
Great.
in this day and era.
Just got
I
more
mean,
fun.
it was common. It was common practice for the NYPD to use kind of brutality tactics in their investigations and interrogations and stuff like that. They'd beat the confessions out of people and everything. So
So I'm gonna walk Captain into the next room, and
so you
say where.
guys you guys walk out into the hallway, and just kind of down the hall a little bit, there's like a waiting area where grieving family members can sit or something like that, because you guys are still kind of in the emergency room area, roughly. And there's no one in there right now, so you can slip in and you can kind of, close the door.
All right, sounds good. So, Captain, this man obviously is a violent murderer. He's already confessed. It didn't even take any persuasion, not much anyway. I'd really like to see who's giving these orders, because if not, I don't know who else is in danger, and I'd rather extract some information from him than have some innocent bystander get murdered, especially brutal like that, if you know what I mean.
Yes, yes. Well, I completely agree with you. As soon as as soon as he's well enough to leave the hospital, be rest assured he will find himself in NYPD's darkest, deepest cell, and he will not see the light of day.
Well, that's definitely good to know. I don't know if he's all there though. I hope the information we can get is reliable. He's all going on about some dark lord or something, so very cultish.
You never know with these individuals.
You see anything like this before? I mean, I don't know if you probably didn't see the murder scene yet, but the Elias was spread open like he was a fish. Weird
Well,
symbol carved into his forehead.
we did have some murders that took place like this here a while back. It's not had one in quite some time, because we put away the guy who was responsible for those.
Does he have like a cult name or something he goes by or claim his murders, or did he confess?
Oh yeah, sure. He confessed. And like all guilty people do. They all eventually confess.
Can I insight this guy?
You can do whatever you want to.
I shoot him in the no, I'm kidding. That'll teach him. All right, well, I have a 10 psychology. Let's go ahead and roll. Yeah, I don't know.
All right.
I'm looking at his missing tooth. I'm a little distracted.
Exactly. Yeah. So as one cop to another, you're just naturally inclined to believe this guy. I mean, he's going to be full forward truthful with you. From one law enforcer to the next.
To the nut. How would you feel about me going in there and putting a finger in one of those bullet holes and find out where his leader is?
Well, I mean, I don't know that I'd necessarily do that right here in the hospital. I mean, we wouldn't want other people, some of the civilians, to see, our interrogation methods.
How soon can we get him to a more secluded location?
I'll I'll talk to the hospital personnel. We'll see if we can expedite their recovery, if you get what I mean.
That sounds good to me. I put my hand out to shake his hand.
He reaches out. He shakes your hand.
I'm glad we're eye to eye on this, Captain.
Oh, it is like crystal. I am so glad that we can work together.
Great. I'll see if I can find any other notes that I may have overlooked to share with you.
Yes,
I'll
yes.
be in touch.
If you happen to get any information whatsoever about this case, be sure to share it with me. I want to make sure if there's any more individuals who are guilty and part of this cult ring thing that you're talking about, I want to make sure they get put away and get a life, get the chair, just like shit. Let me find this name here. Just like Mr. Adams.
You think I could arrange a meeting with Mr. Adams and see if I can connect some dots and maybe see if there's any other of these cultists out there?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to stop you if you try to do anything, but Mr. Adams has been questioned numerous times by all of the fine investigators in the NYPD, and I don't know if there's going to be any more information that he could give you.
Maybe I'll have some other evidence to present to him after I dig into what Elias was looking at. But right now, I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can find any new information to bring to him and yourself.
Let me just give you a little word of advice if you go talk to this Mr. Adams. Just keep in mind that he's a sly old fox. You never know what he's going to try to tell you or get you to believe. I mean, he's trying to tell everyone that he's innocent, and we know that he's not.
Did you guys catch him red-handed or
Oh yeah, about as
witness?
red-handed as they could be. He was standing right over the top of the body, big ass knife in his hand.
So what did he say? He was shaving the guy. How do you say you're innocent after that?
Oh, like it was all a mistake, and that it was a forgery, and that evidence was planted, and all those typical fake things that people make up.
Wow, a fake bloody knife in your hand was planted as you're standing over. Yeah, that's pretty hard to believe.
I know. Tell me about it. I mean, these criminals, they say whatever it is they think someone will believe to get themselves off of the chair.
You know, I think sometimes they actually believe it themselves, which just proves how crazy they are.
You're telling me.
All right,
Well,
Captain.
hey,
Appreciate
listen here, Mr. Jackson. I want to go find out what's going on with this case, and I heard that Lieutenant Poole is heading it up. I'm going to go gather up all the evidence, and I want to personally look into this and make sure that everything gets taken care of. And believe you me, we'll be in touch here in the future.
you. All right, sounds good. I'm gonna see what other information we can compare notes. Good evening to you, sir.
Thank you, thank you. And with that, he opens up the door and he heads out. And he heads down the hall uh, to the room where the prisoners are at. And, and he whispers something to the both of them. I mean, not like an overt whisper kind of a thing, but he's talking, standing an arm's length away from them, but he's talking kind of at a low tone, not very high. You could try to listen if you wanted to,
Sure.
but you're not able to hear it just you know in passing.
Okay. My listen's actually pretty low. I'm surprised I got it last. Never mind. It's actually decent. I was looking at the wrong one.
Okay, so you pause for just a second, try to
I
eavesdrop
didn't
just a
make
little
that one.
bit.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. My mic hasn't changed it. I didn't make that listen.
Yeah, no, you did not. And oddly enough, I don't know why it's not popping up the option for you to spend luck. Maybe you don't have enough luck, so it's not even popping it up.
You know, I think let me try something. I got a mic cover. It might be cause might get loud here in a second.
Okay.
All right, let's try that. Did it just jump like crazy?
No, same difference for me. I'm not having any, other than whenever you first started talking. I'm not having any problem
Okay.
hearing you anymore.
Yeah, I don't know.
When you first connected, it was kind of hard to hear you. It was almost like you were kind of back away from the microphone a little bit, like talking across the room or something. But then as soon as you fixed that, I've not had any problems hearing you since then.
Alright, I guess I'll just try to talk close to it.
Okay. So anyway, you kind of pause for just a moment as you kind of strain to try to hear what he's saying, just trying to eavesdrop, and you don't catch it. You know, he's saying something to the guards in too low of a tone for you to be able to eavesdrop. Okay, and with that, what are you going to do at this point? Are you going to leave the hospital? Are you
Yeah, I
gonna...
guess I'm gonna go try to catch up with the others. I'm gonna go back to the hotel and see if anyone's there.
Okay, so you're going back to Jackson Alliance's hotel where you left them?
Yeah, no cell phone, so that'd be the first place I'd go.
Okay, so you're going to head back to the hotel and you check in at the front desk and inquire as to whether or not, you know, your friends who were here to meet, uh, you know, Mr. Elias are still around. And the front desk staff says, "No, sir. Sorry. The police have poor Mr. Elias's room all secured. This is a tragedy that has happened here at our hotel. I can't believe what has taken place. I believe that I overheard some of Mr. Elias's friends talking about um, going to one of their hotels. They hailed a cab to go to someone else's hotel." All right, will do. All right, so just for the sake of expediting things a little bit, because you guys don't really have anything more to go on until until Charles gets to your location, we're going to say that Charles finds out from, you know, through a chain of events that you guys all went back to Iris's hotel. Uh, we'll retcon it, say that you guys left word at the front desk that should, you know, Mr. Jackson return, inform him that we have gone to, you know, Miss Hahn's hotel. Here's the address. Blah blah blah. So he comes. He arrives at Iris's hotel room. The front desk rings up, says, "Excuse me, Miss Hahn. We have a guest down here at the front desk who is requesting your audience. At such a late hour, I was going to turn him away. Uh, what should I tell him? I'm sorry to disturb you this late in the evening. It's close to about 10 o'clock at night." Yeah, there was no date on the flyer, so you don't really have an indication of exactly when this lecture was. You try calling NYU, but no one answers. It's too late in the evening. There's no one that answers the phone. Well, when you were going over stuff earlier, it was like 9:30. So it wasn't really all that earlier. remember you met with your meeting was at 8. It was 9 o'clock by the time you left with the police. So by the time you got back to Iris's place, it was about 9:30. And so then, because a lot of Charles's stuff was in the same time frame and sequence of you guys doing the stuff at the hotel, Charles gets there at about 10 o'clock. So Charles, we just kind of jumped forward. We said that they left information at the front desk that they had all gone to Iris's hotel room and left the address. And so now we were just playing that Iris gets a hotel from the front desk staff at her, or she gets a phone call from the front desk staff at her hotel, inquiring as to whether or not she wants to accept a guest this late in the evening. That they were inclined to turn him away until morning, thinking that she would be resting for the evening, and they're asking whether or not she wants them to admit him up to her room. Yes, it definitely would be kind of scandalous, a young, aristocratic, kind of a gal such as herself, having a man, and come up to her hotel room 10 o'clock at night. Okay, so Iris, are you going to no, ma'am. He says his name is Mr. Jackson. Young individual, kind of scrawny. Looks like a stiff breeze would blow him over. That's not actually what's said. I was just playing. Hey, I didn't say that one. That's funny, though.
Alright, so I take it I get invited up.
Oh, hold on 1 second here. Let me... Alright, try that again.
I said I take it I get invited up.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of waiting to see here, whether or not she tells them. I'm assuming so, but... Yes, yes, I understand completely, madam. Uh, the bellhop will make sure that he finds his way up to your room. Okay, so the bellhop directs you up to her room, shows you where it's at, and knocks on the door. And Iris or one of the others opens up the, or actually it'd probably be the bodyguard, opens up the door and admits you into the room. The bodyguards are just kind of standing in the background, just kind of, scenery more than anything else.
Evening, gentlemen, ladies.
Charles, you notice that strewn out across the tabletop in the middle of the room where all the couches and everything are in this very luxurious suite that Miss Hahn has in the Waldorf House Astoria is there's a whole bunch of papers and a photograph and a business card and all kinds of different things that are all um, laid out on the table here.
Looks like you guys have been busy. Mr. Barnum, they have those two murderers. They're both look like they're going to survive. I'm sure once they get out of there, they're going to be questioned sharply. But I did manage to get one of them to say that he did in fact kill Elias. Not that that's any surprise, but he said because he was asking too many questions. So we got to find out what those questions are if we want to figure out what's going on before the police start questioning him. I don't know when that's going to be. I don't want anyone else to suffer the same fate Elias did. I don't want to drag anyone into this, though, if they don't want to be. Which captain? That's not the guy that I talked to.
It is the guy
It
you
is.
talked to.
Ah, you don't say. That's the captain I just talked to at the hospital. He seemed like a nice enough guy. You think he's on the take with some cult or like a mob boss or something? You got any more details on that? Where's that information coming from? Yeah, he mentioned that killer. His name's Mr. Adams. He's on death row. And he specifically told me don't believe anything he says, so maybe we should go talk to him. Yeah, I'm not alleging nothing. I don't know nothing about the case at all. You're the one that said you guys have said Mr. Robson might be on the take, and I just know he said the other guy might disagree with the circumstance. Yeah, that's true. The murders didn't stop, but a cult is suddenly one person. One person is a serial killer. My apologies, Miss Hahn. Nice room, by the way. Iris, Kansas, did that weird symbol mean anything to you guys? Maybe I could check with the agency to see if anything on file matches. Are you gonna tell me you got an evil twin sister next? I mean, I guess I could try to sketch it out. You got a pencil? Gee, you want me to try to like roll an intelligence check to mimic it or what?
What are you trying to mimic?
The symbol. If Kansas saw it, yeah, he could probably.
No, no, you guys. I mean, this thing is like etched in your memories, and it's been such short notice. I mean, such a short span of time since you saw it that you would be able to remember without any problem what this thing looked like. In fact, I have it shared in your evidence here. So if you look up in your images, you'll be able to see. Oh, maybe I don't have it shared. Okay, let me share that then. I thought that I already had. It shows that it's shared on my end, but there we go.
Yeah, you showed it to us once before.
And if I remember correctly, I believe that that someone did actually get a little bit of an identification off of it. I think it might have been Kansas.
Kansas, Iris, did either of you identify them? I remember Sean saying it was some kind of tribe, but I failed the roll, so I wouldn't know that.
I don't believe Iris actually made it into the room to look at it. It was, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure it was Kansas. And yes, it was the Cult of the Bloody Tongue. although he really didn't have any details about anything. He didn't roll well enough to get any kind of additional knowledge of it, other than just the vague recollection that, hey, I've seen this symbol before. There's been an association with a cult called the Bloody Tongue that is known to use this symbol. And yeah, they were in Egypt, ancient Egypt, and the Egyptians had kicked them out of the area, and he had run across it in his Egyptian studies.
Well, I could ask
Yes.
the agency if we got anything on that. I ain't never heard of it.
Yes, there's a lot of stuff, Iris, that actually you guys would need to go to the library to research. Look at old newspaper clippings, look at, history books, all kinds of various different things that you guys could conduct using your library research. This game is very much about research, and so library use is your primary method of doing that.
Kansas, just a confession, because he said he was asking too many questions, but now if you're saying that Captain's on the take, I'm a little worried that we're not going to get to ask him any more questions. Yeah, I think I grabbed a piece of paper. I haven't even looked at it, though. You said they all had some kind of paper. I grabbed one.
You actually got three pieces of paper.
Yeah,
Which
I just grabbed them. I didn't even look at them.
You kind of shoved them into your jacket pocket, and you never have given them a second thought yet up until now. And then upon looking at all these papers on the tabletop, you remember, oh yeah, hey, that's right, these guys had some papers that we grabbed from them.
I imagine he's got some research notes somewhere, too.
Now, Iris, you would be pretty safe to say that going to the New York Public Library and looking up stuff of that nature is going to be a very painstaking, difficult process. However, if you went to some place that was known to cater to more of those types of knowledge points, then it could potentially be a little bit easier.
I don't know. Let's take a look. I'll take my papers and lay them out.
And Kansas did identify. I don't know if they're going to tell you in character. There's not really a reason for them to keep it from you, so I'm just going to go ahead and share it openly. But Kansas did identify that the photograph was in Shanghai. Okay, so Charles reaches into his pocket and he pulls out the first item, kind of uncrumples it a little bit, where it's a little bit crumpled up from putting it into his pocket. And this particular item appears to be some sort of a letter. The letter's addressed to a Mr. Carlyle, and it seems to have been written by an individual named Warren Bassart. The text is in a fairly neat, yet precise hand. Let's see. Give me a luck roll. See whether or not you've ever come across this individual. Okay, a regular success is not going to do it. There is a lot of people in Cairo. I was looking for a hard success on that one. Now, you are familiar with some of these locations, though. Street of Jackals, that's the Old Quarter. These names. No, you cannot luck a luck roll. So you're familiar with the region, the area, some of the curio shops and stuff in that area, but this one particular individual, you don't recall having any kind of interactions, or you don't personally know or haven't heard of this person. Now, should you ever travel here in the future, then because we've already ascertained that you are familiar with this location, then any kind of navigation, knowledge-related rolls for this particular area, I'd give you a bonus die. I'm going to leave that to you to remember, though. Had you only gotten had you failed your luck check, then you wouldn't have even have gotten that. So you did get some benefits from your luck check. You just didn't know this particular person. To know Najjar. I was assuming that's who he was wanting to know, since he said that he was wanting to know he had been to Egypt. And Najjar is an Egyptian. Okay, so the second paper, after you guys kind of ponder over this for just a moment, Charles reaches into his pocket and he pulls out a second item. Now, this next item that he pulls out is a business card. And it looks like it's a business card for an individual named Edward Gavigan. It is very elegantly engraved, very fancy, embossed type of business card.
Anyone know what the Pinhu Foundation is?
Very interesting indeed. Barney, Irene, you two would be the most appropriate individuals to have known about the Pinhu Foundation. No, it wouldn't be no check because that is, I would allow a credit rating because this is kind of an upscale kind of a thing. So a credit rating check or a intelligence check, or a luck check. No, one is not harder than the other. They're all going to be of equal difficulty. Okay, Irene used intelligence. Okay, so Irene, maybe in the course of her business, her professional investigations or conducting of her professional business or profession, that she has come across the name of the Penhew Foundation. The Penhew Foundation is in central London on Tottenham Court, obviously based on the business card. It's near the intersection of Morwell and Bailey Street, just north of Oxford Street and west of the British Museum. It is a high Victorian building of fewer stories and greater ceiling height than the buildings to either side, and altogether a grander scale. Kansas, give me an archaeology roll. Kansas would know that the Penhew Foundation has some vague, he's not really exactly know, or he doesn't exactly know exactly how or what or why, but he does know that the Penhew Foundation, he has heard that they have been involved in Egyptian studies. He recalls the name being associated with several different expeditions in Egypt. Let's see. Excuse me. Oh, sorry. Okay, part of Irene's successful intelligence check, she recalls from some of the old news articles that she had read in the past about the Carlisle expedition. She remembers something specific about it, and she remembers that the Penhew Foundation was involved in the Carlisle expedition, and that an individual named Sir Aubrey was a leading figure in the Carlisle expedition of 1919 and was among those who was murdered in Kenya. And so that is what you guys get from your successes. From Irene's intelligence, recalling the newspaper articles about Sir Aubrey Penhew, and then Kansas with his archaeology-related stuff. Barney, unfortunately, was not really... I mean, he would recognize the name, the Penhew Foundation. He may have seen the building and just not really ever realized exactly what it was. Oh, Penhew Foundation, yeah, whoop-de-doo, what do I care? it was just not something that Barney ever really was interested in or inquired about. Okay, and then after you guys kind of ponder over that and discuss that a little bit, there's a third item that Charles pulls from his pocket. This looks like a match case, like a matchbook.
Jeez. I mean, we're looking at Africa, China, Egypt. This is some cult.
Kansas pokes a little bit of fun at Barney. No, this is in Shanghai. So let me give you some additional details about the matchbook. And again, all of these are shared with you. You can view them anytime within Fantasy Grounds while we're in session. And when we're out of session, you can refer to them on Obsidian Portal because I have shared them there within the clues section of the wiki. Okay, now as far as the matchbook goes, it is from the Stumbling Tiger Bar. It is an empty matchbook. At first glance, it just kind of looks like it's a random piece of trash from a Shanghai bar. You don't really know what kind of significance this place has. You just might want to tuck it away in your memory banks, that should you go to Shanghai, might be someplace that you want to look into just to see what kind of significance it might have. It could be absolutely nothing. It could just be a matchbook. I mean, you don't even know necessarily that it even came from Jackson Elias. It could have been something that one of these thugs had in his pockets, and that was it. There is nothing written inside of it. It is completely empty. Even the matches have been used. And so Cecil, being an alumni of Harvard, could definitely give you, some type of a connection. Alright, and this is probably a good place for us to wrap up for the night. We are 3 minutes and 35 seconds, 3 hours and 35 minutes into the session, 11:30 at night here, close to time to start wrapping things up. So you guys kind of ponder the clues that you have acquired. You have these items that you can all mull over. Definitely something that you will want to keep track of as you look into the events surrounding Mr. Elias's death, or should I say his murder. And for right now, though, you're in New York and you have several things that point to items of interest within New York. And so you're inclined to probably want to look into those first before you start pondering all these other foreign objects. It is late at night. It's, by the time you're done looking over this stuff and talking about the clues and everything else, it's getting on close to about, 10:30 or so. And are you guys going to stay here for the evening with Iris in her hotel room? Or are you going to leave and go off to your own hotels to spend the night? Physically, there is enough room to crash here. However, there is only one bed for Iris, a big, posh bed, and then the guards, typically they will sleep on pullouts. And so if you guys did crash here, you would have to try to find a place on a couch, in a chair, on the floor, something like that. Although it's also kind of up to Iris whether or not she wants to chance the impropriety of having overnight guests in her room, composed primarily of men.
Maybe we should all plan on meeting up sometime tomorrow.
Yeah, adjoining rooms would be a thing in this time, in this era. Okay, so you guys all head back to your own respective hotels. You're kind of paranoid. You spend the night kind of, jerking at every single little sound that you hear, but, most of you have fairly decent hotels. You're not slumming it in the um, rundown areas of town or anything like that. So you do sleep through the evening uneventfully. There's no harm that comes to any of you other than just in your own dreams. Now, since you do have a good night's rest, everyone give me a luck roll. This is your standard daily luck improvement chance. And so it looks like only Cecil failed. Oh, did Barney fail also? Barney, where are you? No, Barney got a hard success. Yeah, your luck is crap, but you rolled a 12 out of 36. So you got a hard success. Yes, you want to fail in order to be able to increase it. So the only failure that I see out of everyone's checks is from Cecil. So Cecil is the only one who gets to bump up his luck. And he gets to roll 2d10 because he has the lucky trait. And so he increases his luck by 8. Okay, and that's your benefit for a good night's rest for our daily luck rolls. No one is injured, so you don't have to worry about healing anything. No one took any injuries from your little scrape. With the assassins. Yes, I will be off next week, and so we will not be having a game session next Thursday. So it'll be 2 weeks from now before we resume. Hope that everyone has a good 2 weeks. Take time to look over the clues that you have in Obsidian Portal and kind of piece together different components. Remember, I'm not going to feed information to you. This is an investigation that is for you guys to uncover clues on your own, decide what you want to pursue and how you want to pursue it, and all that good stuff. And so, as you succeed on rolls, I am giving you little tidbits of additional information. But for the most part, you're going to have to piece all those together yourself. And so when we resume next time, it will be the next morning. And so I am going to go ahead and fast forward the clock here. and just kind of give us a preliminary timestamp for resuming next time. It will be Friday the 16th, 8 o'clock a.m. when everyone wakes up and you guys get together, meet at the local coffee house or whatever it is, and discuss what it is that you're going to look into. I'm going to just leave you off with this one last little piece of information, one last clue to add to your list of things. And that is going to be in the morning paper whenever you wake up the next morning and there's an article in the paper the next morning, and that'll be our last little item to leave off with as you gather the paper and are sitting in the coffee house for coffee the next morning. All right, and so I'm going to call this an official end to this session. I hope that everyone had a good time. I'm going to go ahead and turn the recording off now.